Welcome, dear listener. Tonight, I invite you to step away from the clamor of the modern world. The headlines, the noise, the urgency of each moment. Let them go. Take a deep breath. Let it fill your chest slowly. And as you exhale, allow your shoulders to soften, your mind to settle, and your senses to quiet. You're safe here. This space is one of stillness, of gentle reflection. And together, we'll drift not into fantasy, but into a reality suspended in time. Not through the halls of emperors or the roar of distant armies, but into something much more fragile and much more human. Tonight's journey brings us to a place where life thrived quietly, where daily rhythms pulsed unnoticed by history, until one single cataclysmic moment turned them to ash. But this is not a story of fire and destruction. Not yet. This is a story of Pompeii, of its final ordinary day. Imagine, if you will, a soft current pulling you gently backward, not sailing, but drifting, past the thundering legions of Rome, past the bustling docks of Ostia, past triumphal arches and whispered conquests. We are not bound for a battlefield, nor a senate chamber. We are going to a marketplace, a garden, a bakery, a villa, a street where children laugh and dogs nap in the sun. We are going to listen, not to speeches or sermons, but to footsteps, to hammers, to breathing. We are going to hear what life sounded like just before the silence. The city is still there, beneath the ash, preserved in a silent embrace. And tonight, with care, with reverence, and with curiosity, we return. This journey is not about spectacle. It is not meant to thrill or shock. It is, above all, an act of empathy, a meditation on how fragile and sacred daily life can be, especially when we don't realize it is ending. We'll feel the warmth of the sun as it touches ancient stone, smell bread baking before dawn, hear the laughter of children echo through alleys. These aren't historical abstractions. They were real moments, real lives, just like yours. And for a brief time, we will walk beside them. There is, of course, a deep irony woven into the fabric of this tale, that a city so full of life, so confident in its tomorrow, had no idea it was living its very last day. There were no sirens, no warnings shouted in the streets, no panic, just life. Ongoing, unaware. There were subtle tremors, a strange stillness in the air, a few uneasy glances at the mountain, but nothing that could shatter the ritual of routine. The baker rose early. The priest lit the lamp. The merchant opened shop. And so the day began. We will move gently through this world, following the patterns of the city without rushing or lingering too long on any one story. Because in truth, Pompeii itself is our narrator. Not a person, not a name. A city, breathing, sighing, pulsing with thousands of quiet intentions. It will awaken, glow in its midday rhythm, retreat into a calm evening, and then fall into sudden, irreversible stillness. This is not a tale of collapse. It is a celebration of life, of lives, of the meals shared, the prayers whispered, the errands run, the gardens watered. The ash did not just bury Pompeii, it preserved it. It captured not only walls and doorways, but gestures, expressions, decisions. That morning, people lived, fully, unknowingly, completely. As we journey further into this narrative, you may begin to reflect on your own life, on your routines, on the preciousness of what feels ordinary. Pompeii is not here to haunt us. It's here to remind us that joy can be quiet, that beauty can be simple, that presence, the act of truly existing in a moment, is itself a miracle. In those final hours, the people of Pompeii were not screaming. They were laughing, talking, cooking, thinking, being. So if you'd like, close your eyes, or let your gaze blur into the gentle darkness. Let your breath slow. Let your mind quiet. We're not here to witness destruction. We're here to remember life, to feel it move softly around us, like steam rising from a bath or sun warming the shoulder of a sleeping dog. We are here to return, quietly, respectfully, and fully. The city waits beneath the ash, not ruined, just paused. And tonight, we go back, not to mourn what was lost, but to feel what was lived. As the first rays of dawn kissed the slumbering city of Pompeii, a symphony of awakening began to unfold. This was not the abrupt, jarring start of a modern metropolis, but a gentle, organic unfurling, a city stretching and yawning as it prepared to embrace the day. The cobbled streets, still cool from the night air, began to echo with the rhythmic creak of wooden cartwheels, the first stirrings of commerce and daily life. This was Pompeii in bloom, a vibrant tapestry woven from the threads of countless individual routines, a city alive with the pulse of human endeavor, utterly oblivious to the shadow that loomed on the horizon. The morning sun climbing steadily over the distant peaks of the Apennines, cast long, soft shadows across the narrow alleyways and painted the stuccoed walls of houses in hues of ochre, terracotta, and vibrant Pompeian red. These were not the drab, uniform facades of later eras, but canvases adorned with lively frescoes, depicting scenes from mythology, daily life, or intricate geometric patterns. Balconies, overflowing with potted plants and trailing vines, added splashes of green to the urban landscape, while laundry, strung across narrow streets, swayed gently in the morning breeze, a testament to the domestic rhythms that underpinned the city's existence. From the open doorways of bakeries, the irresistible aroma of freshly baked bread began to waft through the air, mingling with the sharper, more pungent scents of herbs, spices, and fermenting wine from nearby market stalls. The pistrina, or bakeries, were hives of activity, their stone ovens already radiating a comforting warmth as bakers, often slaves, kneaded dough with practiced hands, their movements a timeless ballet of sustenance. The sound of grinding stones, as grain was milled into flour, provided a steady, rhythmic backdrop to the awakening city dot in the bustling marketplaces, such as the Misellum near the Forum. Merchants began to set up their stalls, their voices rising in a cacophony of calls and negotiations. Amphorae filled with wine from the fertile slopes of Vesuvius, baskets overflowing with gleaming olives, pungent cheeses, freshly caught fish from the Bay of Naples, and an array of fruits and vegetables. All were laid out in a vibrant display of the region's bounty. Here, amidst the haggling and banter, the social life of Pompeii was in full swing, a daily ritual of commerce and community. Laughter, that universal language of human connection, floated from open windows and doorways as families began their morning routines. The clatter of pottery, the murmur of conversations, the distant cries of children at play, these were the sounds that filled the air, painting a picture of a city at ease, a city secure in its daily rhythms. Life pulsed through the labyrinthine alleyways, a constant flow of people from all walks of life. Wealthy citizens on their way to the Forum, artisans heading to their workshops, slaves running errands for their masters, and children darting through the crowds, their energy a vibrant counterpoint to the more measured pace of adult life. This was Pompeii in its prime, a prosperous Roman city, a hub of commerce and culture, a place where life was lived with a certain Mediterranean zest. Its streets were paved with large, irregular stones, often with raised stepping stones at intersections to allow pedestrians to cross without soiling their feet in the muck and mire that often accumulated. The walls were covered in graffiti, a testament to the literacy and expressive nature of its inhabitants. Political slogans, advertisements for gladiatorial games, declarations of love, and even mundane shopping lists, all etched into the very fabric of the city. Yet beneath this veneer of vibrant normalcy, the subtle signs of an impending catastrophe were already present, though largely unnoticed. The unusual heat, the restlessness of animals, the faint tremors that occasionally rippled through the earth, these were dismissed as minor inconveniences, easily absorbed into the familiar patterns of daily life. The city, in its bloom, was utterly unaware that this ordinary day would be its last, that the very forces that had nurtured its fertile lands were now conspiring to bring about its sudden, tragic end. The rhythm of life, so strong and steady, was about to be irrevocably broken. The vibrant colors of Pompeii, destined to be preserved, yet silenced, beneath a blanket of ash. Within the labyrinthine streets of Pompeii, amidst the vibrant tapestry of daily life, stood the humble yet essential establishments of the bakers. Our journey now takes us inside one such place, the well-preserved ruins of a baker's house, where the rhythmic thud of kneading dough and the crackle of fire in stone ovens were the very heartbeat of the morning. This was not merely a place of commerce. It was a home, a workshop, and a testament to the enduring human need for sustenance. Here, amidst the flour dust and the comforting warmth, we witnessed the morning rituals that unfolded, a microcosm of Pompeian life, utterly unaware of the impending doom. The typical Roman pastrinum, or bakery, was often integrated into a residential dwelling, combining living quarters with the production area. The heart of the operation was the large dome-shaped oven, built of brick and stone, designed to retain heat for long periods. Early in the morning, often before dawn, the fires would be stoked, filling the air with the scent of wood smoke and the promise of freshly baked bread. The baker, often a freedman or a slave, would oversee the entire process, from the grinding of grain to the final delivery of loaves. Archaeological excavations of bakeries in Pompeii have revealed remarkable details about their operations. Large millstones, often powered by donkeys, were used to grind wheat into flour. The flour, sometimes mixed with water and a sourdough starter from the previous day's batch, would then be kneaded into dough. This was a laborious process, often done by hand or with simple mechanical mixers. The rhythmic sound of hands working the dough, the soft sigh of flour settling in the air, would have been a constant presence in these early morning hours. For the slaves who toiled in these bakeries, life was arduous. Their hands, calloused and strong, moved with practiced efficiency, their faces often expressionless, reflecting years of repetitive labor. They worked in the dim light of oil lamps, their movements a silent ballet of duty, ensuring that the city would awaken to the comforting aroma and taste of fresh bread. Their lives, though often unseen and unacknowledged by the broader society, were fundamental to the functioning of Pompeii, a silent testament to the intricate web of dependencies that characterized Roman life. Once the dough was ready, it would be shaped into loaves, often marked with the baker's stamp, a unique identifier that served as both a brand and a quality assurance. These loaves, typically round and scored into segments, were then carefully placed into the preheated oven using long wooden peels. The intense heat would quickly transform the raw dough into golden brown loaves, their crusts crisp and their interiors soft and airy. The crackling of the fire, the hiss of steam as the bread baked, and the eventual rich aroma of cooked bread would have filled the bakery, a sensory delight that signaled the success of their morning's labor. As the sun rose higher, children, often the baker's own or young slaves, would begin the task of delivering the freshly baked loaves to various parts of the city. Their small footsteps, light and quick, would have echoed on the cobbled streets, a stark contrast to the heavy, deliberate movements of the bakers themselves. These children, with baskets laden with warm bread, would have been a familiar sight, their presence a reminder of the continuous cycle of production and consumption that defined Pompeian life. The enduring legacy of the baker's house in Pompeii is not just in its preserved ovens and millstones, but in the tangible connection it provides to the ordinary people who lived and worked there. The carbonized remains of bread, found still in the ovens, offer a poignant glimpse into the suddenness of the catastrophe. The very footsteps of the bakers and their delivery children are still visible in the hardened ash, a silent testament to their final, unsuspecting moments. This was just another day, a routine morning, until it wasn't. The eruption of Vesuvius froze these moments in time, preserving not just the grand narratives of history, but the intimate, profoundly human details of daily life. From the bustling bakeries and quiet homes, the pulse of Pompeii's daily life inevitably led to its vibrant heart, the Forum. This grand public square, a sprawling expanse of paved stone, surrounded by temples, basilicas, and public buildings, was far more than just a civic center. It was the city's living room, its political arena, its spiritual hub, and its most prolific rumor mill. Here, under the vast Mediterranean sky, the voices of Pompeii converged, weaving a complex tapestry of politics, gossip, and prayer, a symphony of human interaction that hummed with an energy all its own. As the morning progressed, the Forum would swell with activity. Priests, robed in white, moved with solemn dignity on the steps of the Temple of Jupiter, offering incense and prayers to the gods, their murmurs blending with the rising clamor of the crowd. The air, thick with the scent of burning offerings and the earthy aroma of the unwashed masses, vibrated with 1,000 conversations. Citizens, dressed in their togas, debated the latest political decrees, their gestures animated, their voices rising and falling with the passion of their arguments. Elections were fiercely contested, and the walls of the Forum, like much of Pompeii, were plastered with painted slogans urging support for various candidates, a testament to the lively democratic spirit that, despite its limitations, still thrived in Roman municipalities. Adjacent to the temples and basilicas, the legal and commercial life of Pompeii unfolded. Magistrates, seated in their tribunals, heard cases, dispensed justice, and mediated disputes, their pronouncements echoing through the open space. Merchants, ever opportunistic, set up temporary stalls, hawking their wares, fine textiles, exotic spices, and precious jewelry to a discerning clientele. The shouts of vendors, the clinking of coins, and the rustle of fabrics created a vibrant commercial din, a constant reminder of the city's economic vitality. Even here, amidst the serious business of law and trade, the lighter side of human nature found its expression. Two women, perhaps a matron and her slave, would pause by a stall of herbs, ostensibly to haggle over prices. But their hushed whispers and knowing glances would betray a deeper conversation, the latest gossip, a scandalous affair, or a whispered secret about a neighbor's fortunes. Artisans, too, found their place in the Forum's periphery. A sculptor, his hands dusted with marble, would meticulously smooth a newly carved bust with a wet cloth, his concentration unbroken by the surrounding hubbub. His work, destined for a wealthy patron's villa or a public monument, was a testament to the city's appreciation for beauty and craftsmanship. Nearby, a painter might be mixing pigments, preparing to adorn a new wall with a vibrant fresco, his art a reflection of the city's aesthetic sensibilities. Yet, beneath this vibrant surface, a subtle undercurrent of unease had begun to ripple through the city. Rumors of tremors, more frequent and pronounced than usual, circulated amongst the crowds. These were often dismissed with a shrug, a casual wave of the hand. Harmless, surely. Pompeii had experienced earthquakes before. The Great Quake of 62 AD had caused significant damage, but the city had rebuilt, its resilience a source of pride. The gods were watching, some would say, their favor ensuring the city's continued prosperity. But even the most devout might have felt a prickle of doubt, a fleeting sense of foreboding, as the ground beneath their feet occasionally shifted with an unsettling regularity. The Forum, usually a place of certainty and order, now carried a faint tremor of uncertainty. The usual debates about politics and the latest scandals were occasionally punctuated by hushed conversations about the strange behavior of animals, or the unusual heat that seemed to cling to the air. A magistrate, usually unflappable, might find his attention momentarily diverted by a sudden sharp jolt. his brow furrowing in a fleeting moment of concern before he resumed his pronouncements. The crowd, though still moving with purpose, seemed to carry a subtle tension, an unspoken awareness of something amiss. Despite these nascent anxieties, the rhythm of life in the Forum continued its inexorable march. The crowd kept moving, a river of humanity flowing through the heart of the city. Beneath the grandeur of its columns, amidst the echoes of prayers and political debates, it was, for all intents and purposes, just another day. The sun continued its arc across the sky, casting ever-shifting shadows across the paved stones. The sounds of commerce and conversation continued to rise and fall, a testament to the human capacity for normalcy, even in the face of the extraordinary. The Forum, in its vibrant, unsuspecting existence, was a powerful symbol of Pompeii's life, a life that was about to be abruptly, tragically, and forever silenced. Beyond the bustling Forum and the intimate confines of the baker's house, an omnipresent, yet largely ignored, entity loomed over Pompeii, Mount Vesuvius. Its slopes, verdant with vineyards and olive groves, had for centuries been a symbol of fertility and prosperity, a benign giant watching over the Bay of Naples. But on this particular day, the mountain, usually a silent and majestic backdrop, began to betray a subtle unease, casting long, unsettling shadows that hinted at a deeper, more sinister truth. These were the shadows of Vesuvius, a series of quakes and omens that, in hindsight, were chilling harbingers of the catastrophe to come. For generations, the people of Pompeii had lived in comfortable proximity to Vesuvius, unaware of its true nature as a dormant volcano. The last major eruption had occurred centuries before, fading into the realm of myth and distant memory. Earthquakes were a common occurrence in the region, a familiar tremor that rarely caused significant alarm. The great earthquake of 62 AD, which had devastated Pompeii and Herculaneum, was still a relatively recent memory, and the city was still in the process of rebuilding. This past experience, however, had perhaps instilled a false sense of security, a belief that the Earth's rumblings were merely a nuisance, not a prelude to annihilation. On this fateful day, the tremors began to intensify, subtle at first, a low tremble that disturbed the dust on a windowsill or caused a lamp to sway almost imperceptibly. These were not the violent jolts of the 62 AD quake, but a persistent, unsettling vibration that permeated the very fabric of the city. Dogs, with their heightened senses, grew restless, their barks becoming more frequent and agitated, their eyes wide with an unidentifiable fear. Birds, usually a constant presence in the Mediterranean sky, vanished, their cheerful chirping replaced by an eerie silence. These were nature's warnings, subtle yet profound, largely ignored by the human inhabitants, absorbed in their daily routines. A boy, perhaps playing in the fields outside the city, might have claimed to see a wisp of smoke, or even a faint glow, behind the peak of Vesuvius. His father, a man of practical concerns, would likely have laughed, dismissing it as a trick of the light, or the boy's overactive imagination. "It's nothing," they would say, echoing the collective sentiment of a city unwilling to acknowledge the unthinkable. Nothing ever happens here. This denial, born of familiarity and a deep-seated human tendency to rationalize the unfamiliar, was a tragic flaw that sealed their fate. Even as the tremors grew more frequent and the air grew heavier with an unidentifiable scent, life in Pompeii continued its inexorable march. The market, despite the subtle unease, opened as usual, its stalls overflowing with goods, its merchants shouting their prices. The public baths, those communal havens of relaxation and hygiene, were warmed, their waters inviting. The shadow of Vesuvius, both literal and metaphorical, was ignored, absorbed into the familiar landscape of their lives. The people of Pompeii, in their innocence, were living out their final hours, their lives a testament to the human capacity for normalcy, even in the face of the extraordinary. The omens were there, for those who chose to see them. The restless animals, the vanishing birds, the persistent tremors, the unusual atmospheric conditions, all pointed to an impending geological event. But the human mind, conditioned by years of routine and a lack of direct experience with volcanic eruptions, struggled to interpret these signs correctly. The sheer scale of the potential disaster was beyond their comprehension, and so they continued their lives, unaware that the very ground beneath their feet was a ticking time bomb. Beyond the bustling heart of Pompeii, nestled amidst the verdant slopes overlooking the Bay of Naples, lay the opulent villas of the city's elite. These were not mere houses, but sprawling estates, testaments to wealth, power, and a refined taste for luxury. Our journey now takes us to one such villa, a place of serene beauty and carefully cultivated silence, where the rhythms of life moved at a different pace, insulated from the clamor of the city below. Here, amidst manicured gardens, shimmering fountains, and frescoes depicting mythological scenes, the final hours unfolded with a deceptive tranquility, a stark contrast to the growing unease that permeated the urban landscape. The typical Roman villa was a self-contained world, designed for both comfort and display. Its architecture often blended seamlessly with the natural landscape, offering breathtaking panoramic views of the sea and the distant Vesuvius. Inside, the layout was meticulously planned, with grand atriums and peristyle gardens forming the central axis around which living quarters, dining rooms, and private baths were arranged. The walls were adorned with vibrant frescoes, depicting scenes from mythology, daily life, or intricate geometric patterns, transforming each room into a work of art. Marble statues, imported from Greece, stood sentinel in the gardens, while the gentle murmur of water from fountains provided a soothing soundtrack to the leisurely pace of life. Life in these villas was orchestrated by a retinue of slaves, each with their specific duties. From the meticulous care of the gardens to the preparation of elaborate meals, their unseen labor ensured the seamless functioning of the household. The silence that often pervaded these spaces was not an absence of sound, but a carefully managed quiet, punctuated by the soft rustle of silk garments, the distant clinking of pottery, or the hushed whispers of servants. For the villa's owners, this silence was a luxury, a refuge from the demands of public life, a space for contemplation, intellectual pursuits, and intimate gatherings. On this fateful day, the villa on the hill would have offered a deceptive sense of security. The tremors that had shaken the city below might have been felt here as gentle undulations, easily dismissed as minor earth movements. The oppressive heat, though present, might have been mitigated by the cool breezes from the sea and the shade of ancient trees. The strange atmospheric phenomena, the yellowish sky, the thin smoke, might have been observed with a detached curiosity, perhaps discussed over a leisurely meal, but without a true understanding of their ominous significance. The villa, in its elevated position, seemed to offer a vantage point, a sense of detachment from the unfolding events. Yet even in this sanctuary of wealth and silence, the subtle tendrils of unease would have begun to creep in. Perhaps a favorite pet, usually docile, would have displayed unusual agitation, its instincts sensing a danger beyond human comprehension. Perhaps a servant, more attuned to the rhythms of the earth, would have expressed a quiet concern, their words dismissed as superstitious fears. The beauty of the frescoes, the tranquility of the gardens, the luxury of the surroundings, these would have provided a fragile veneer, barely concealing the growing anxiety that gnawed at the edges of consciousness. The very silence that was once a luxury would have become unsettling, amplifying every creak of the house, every distant rumble. For the inhabitants of the villa, the final hours would have been a slow, agonizing realization of their vulnerability. The initial fall of ash, though light, would have begun to mar the pristine surfaces of their gardens, a visible intrusion of the chaos below. The darkening sky, once a source of beauty, would have transformed into a terrifying canopy, blotting out the sun and plunging the villa into an unnatural twilight. The silence, once a comfort, would have been replaced by the relentless rustle of falling pumice, a chilling soundtrack to their impending doom. The villa, a symbol of their control and mastery over their world, would have become a trap, its very grandeur now a barrier to escape. As the sun climbed higher in the Pompeian sky, an oppressive, almost tangible heat began to settle over the city. This was not the familiar warmth of a Mediterranean summer day. It was a heavy, suffocating blanket, accompanied by an unnatural stillness that hushed the usual vibrant sounds of urban life. The air, usually alive with the chatter of vendors, the laughter of children, and the distant calls of sailors from the port, grew strangely quiet. This was the heat before the storm, a palpable tension in the atmosphere, a silent warning that went largely unheeded. Our journey now takes us into this unsettling stillness, to witness the subtle, yet increasingly ominous, signs that preceded the cataclysm. The unusual intensity of the heat would have been one of the first things to register in the collective consciousness of Pompeii. The stone-paved streets, normally radiating a comfortable warmth, would have become uncomfortably hot to the touch. The air, usually carrying the salty tang of the nearby sea, would have felt thick and stagnant, making every breath a conscious effort. Even the shade offered by porticos and awnings would have provided little relief, as the heat seemed to emanate from the very ground beneath their feet. This oppressive atmosphere would have driven many to seek refuge indoors, or to linger in the cooler, shaded areas of their homes and gardens. Accompanying the heat was an unnatural stillness, the usual symphony of city sounds, the clatter of carts, the hammering of artisans, the boisterous calls of merchants seemed to diminish, replaced by a low, almost imperceptible hum. The birds, usually so vocal in the Mediterranean sky, would have fallen silent, their absence a subtle, yet unsettling, disruption of the natural order. Even the wind, which typically provided a refreshing breeze from the bay, seemed to hold its breath, leaving the city in a state of suspended animation. This profound quiet, broken only by the distant, muffled sounds of daily life, would have created an eerie, almost surreal atmosphere. For the animals of Pompeii, with their heightened senses, the growing unease would have been even more pronounced. Dogs, usually boisterous and playful, might have become restless and agitated, whining or barking without apparent cause. Livestock, such as goats and donkeys, might have refused to eat, their eyes wide with an instinctive fear. Even the insects, usually a constant presence in the Mediterranean climate, might have seemed to disappear, their absence adding to the unsettling stillness. These subtle shifts in animal behavior, though perhaps noticed by some, would have been largely dismissed as inconsequential, their significance lost in the human preoccupation with daily routines. And then there was the smoke. Not the familiar fragrant smoke of cooking fires or bakers' ovens, but a thin, almost invisible, colorless smoke that began to drift over the city, emanating from the direction of Vesuvius. It carried a faint, acrid smell, a subtle hint of sulfur that would have been unfamiliar and unsettling. For those who noticed it, it might have been a source of curiosity, perhaps even a topic of conversation in the marketplaces or taverns. But few, if any, would have connected it to the dormant volcano that loomed silently in the distance. Vesuvius had been quiet for centuries, its slopes covered in vineyards and olive groves, a symbol of fertility and abundance, not a harbinger of destruction. This combination of oppressive heat, unnatural stillness, strange animal behavior, and the faint smell of sulfur created a palpable sense of unease, a subtle undercurrent of anxiety that permeated the city. Yet life, in its stubborn resilience, continued. Merchants still haggled in the forum, children still played in the streets, and families still gathered for their midday meals. The human capacity for normalcy, for adapting to even the most unsettling circumstances, is a powerful force. And so, the warning signs, though present, were largely ignored, absorbed into the familiar tapestry of daily existence. The heat before the storm was a silent, insidious creep, a gradual escalation of tension that went largely unrecognized until it was too late. As the afternoon wore on and the oppressive heat of the day intensified, many Pompeians sought refuge and rejuvenation in the city's public baths. These were not merely places for physical cleansing. They were vibrant social hubs, centers of community life, where citizens of all strata could gather, relax, and engage in the daily rituals of Roman society. The baths were a testament to Roman engineering and their understanding of public health and leisure, offering a complex sequence of rooms designed to cater to every need, from vigorous exercise to tranquil contemplation. Our journey now takes us into these bustling, steamy sanctuaries to witness the final hours of camaraderie and comfort before the world outside changed forever. The typical Roman bath complex was a marvel of design, a carefully orchestrated sequence of experiences. Upon entering, one would first encounter the appetiterium, the changing room, where clothes were shed and valuables entrusted to attendants. From there, the journey often began in the palestra, an open-air exercise ground where men and women, though often in separate facilities or at different times, engaged in wrestling, ball games, or light calisthenics. The sounds of grunts, laughter, and the thud of bodies would have filled the air, a stark contrast to the growing stillness outside. This initial burst of activity served to stimulate the body and prepare it for the subsequent stages of relaxation. Next came the tepidarium, the warm room, a transitional space designed to acclimate the body to the increasing heat. Here, the air was comfortably warm, filled with the gentle murmur of conversation and the subtle scent of perfumed oils. It was a place for leisurely conversation, for catching up on the latest gossip, or for simply unwinding after the day's exertions. The light filtering through the high windows would have cast soft patterns on the mosaic floors, creating an atmosphere of serene tranquility. This was where the social aspect of the baths truly began to flourish, as friends and acquaintances exchanged pleasantries and discussed the day's events. The heart of the baths was the caldarium, the hot room, a steamy, humid environment where the body was encouraged to sweat profusely. Here, the air was thick with vapor, and the sounds of splashing water and hushed whispers would have mingled with the rhythmic scraping of the strigil, a curved metal tool used to scrape off sweat, oil, and dirt. This was the ultimate cleansing experience, a ritual of purification that left the body feeling invigorated and refreshed. Despite the intense heat, the caldarium was often a place of lively interaction, as bathers engaged in discussions, shared stories, and even conducted informal business. The shared vulnerability of the experience fostered a unique sense of camaraderie, breaking down some of the social barriers that existed outside the baths. Following the intense heat of the caldarium, bathers would move to the frigidarium, the cold room, typically featuring a large, unheated plunge pool. The shock of the cold water, a bracing contrast to the preceding heat, served to close the pores, invigorate the circulation, and leave the bather feeling utterly refreshed. This final stage of the bathing ritual was often brief, but exhilarating, a final punctuation mark to the communal experience. Some bath complexes also included a laconicum, a dry sweating room similar to a modern sauna, or a sudatorium, a moist sweating room, offering further variations on the cleansing process. On this particular afternoon, the baths of Pompeii would have been particularly busy. The oppressive heat outside would have driven many citizens to seek relief within their cool, damp confines. The sounds of laughter and conversation would have echoed through the vaulted ceilings, a comforting symphony of normalcy. Yet even within these walls, the subtle signs of unease might have been present. Perhaps a sudden, more pronounced tremor would have caused a momentary hush, a collective glance towards the ceiling. Perhaps the water in the pools would have seemed unusually warm, or the steam thicker than usual. The attendants, accustomed to the rhythms of the baths, might have noticed a subtle shift in the mood, a growing undercurrent of anxiety, beneath the surface of apparent calm. For the people of Pompeii, the baths were more than just a place to get clean. They were a vital part of their social fabric, a space where daily life unfolded in all its complexity. They were a microcosm of the city itself, reflecting its vibrancy, its social interactions, and its enduring spirit. And on this final afternoon, as the shadows of Vesuvius lengthened and the earth continued its restless murmur, the baths offered a temporary sanctuary, a final moment of shared humanity before the world outside changed forever. The sounds of laughter and camaraderie, the comforting embrace of steam, the simple rituals of cleansing and community. These were the last vestiges of normalcy, a poignant reminder of the lives that were being lived, unaware of the cataclysm that was about to engulf them. The baths, in their enduring presence, stand as a powerful symbol of Pompeii's daily life, a testament to the human need for connection, comfort, and routine, even in the face of an unimaginable fate. As the sun began its slow descent towards the horizon, casting long, dramatic shadows across the city, a different kind of warmth began to emanate from within the homes of Pompeii. This was the warmth of shared humanity, the comforting glow of family and friendship gathering for the evening meal. The cena, or dinner, was the most important meal of the day for Romans, a time for relaxation, conversation, and communal bonding. It was a ritual that transcended social status, bringing together rich and poor, free and enslaved, in a shared moment of sustenance and connection. On this particular evening, however, this common meal would take on an unforeseen, tragic significance, becoming for many, unknowingly, their last supper. For the wealthy, the cena was often an elaborate affair, held in the triclinium, a formal dining room furnished with 3 couches arranged in a U-shape, allowing guests to recline while they ate. The meal itself would consist of multiple courses, from appetizers of eggs, olives, and salads to the main course, of meat or fish accompanied by vegetables and bread, and finally desserts of fruits, nuts, and pastries. Fine wines, often diluted with water, would flow freely, and entertainment, such as musicians, dancers, or poets, might be provided. These were occasions for intellectual discourse, political strategizing, and social display, where the host's generosity and taste were on full exhibition. In contrast, for the working classes and the enslaved, the evening meal would have been far simpler, often consumed in the kitchen or a more modest dining area. Their diet would have been largely based on grains, such as bread and porridge, supplemented with vegetables, legumes, and occasionally salted fish or cheap cuts of meat. Wine, if available, would have been of a coarser quality. Yet, despite the differences in fare and setting, the underlying purpose of the meal remained the same: to nourish the body, to rest after a day of labor, and to reinforce the bonds of family and community. These were moments of quiet intimacy, where stories were shared, worries were eased, and the simple act of eating together became a profound expression of solidarity. On this fateful evening, as the shadows lengthened and the air grew heavy with an unspoken tension, the ritual of the evening meal would have unfolded across Pompeii with its usual rhythm. In the grand villas, the clinking of silver and the murmur of polite conversation would have filled the triclinium, perhaps punctuated by the nervous laughter of a guest remarking on the unusual heat or a subtle tremor. The aroma of roasted meats and exotic spices would have wafted through the air, mingling with the faint, acrid scent that now seemed to cling to everything. In the more humble homes, the sounds would have been different. The comforting crackle of a small fire, the clatter of earthenware, the easy chatter of children, and the weary sighs of adults. The simple meal of bread, olives, and perhaps a stew would have been consumed with a quiet gratitude, each bite a small victory against the day's toil. The flickering light of oil lamps would have cast dancing shadows on the walls, creating an illusion of warmth and security, even as the world outside grew increasingly ominous. What makes these final meals so poignant is the utter unawareness of those partaking in them. There was no grand farewell, no tearful goodbyes, no last wishes exchanged. Just the ordinary routines of life, lived out to their unsuspecting conclusion. The conversations would have been about the day's events, plans for tomorrow, the usual gossip and concerns that fill human lives. The children would have squabbled over a piece of fruit. The parents would have offered advice. The friends would have shared a laugh. These were moments of profound normalcy, imbued with a heartbreaking irony by the knowledge of what was to come. The archaeological evidence from Pompeii offers chilling glimpses into these final meals. Skeletons found huddled around dining tables, still clutching their cups or plates, bear silent witness to the suddenness of the catastrophe. The remains of food, perfectly preserved in carbonized form, loaves of bread, bowls of olives, even whole eggs, paint a vivid picture of the meals that were so abruptly interrupted. These are not just archaeological finds. They are poignant snapshots of human life, frozen in the act of its most fundamental ritual. They remind us that the people of Pompeii were not abstract figures from history, but real individuals, living real lives, right up until the very last moment. As the last vestiges of daylight faded from the Pompeian sky, replaced by the soft glow of oil lamps and the flickering warmth of hearth fires, an unseen drama was unfolding high above the city. The evening, which for centuries had brought a comforting blanket of darkness and the promise of rest, was now subtly transforming into something far more sinister. This was nightfall, but not as the Pompeians knew it. It was the unseen ascent of Vesuvius, a silent, relentless buildup of pressure that would soon unleash a fury beyond human comprehension. Our narrative now shifts its focus from the intimate details of daily life to the grand, terrifying scale of geological forces as the mountain prepares to make its devastating presence known. For generations, Vesuvius had been a benevolent presence, its slopes fertile with vineyards and olive groves, its silhouette a familiar and comforting landmark against the Mediterranean sky. It was a mountain, not a volcano, in the collective consciousness of the region. The subtle tremors that had been felt throughout the day, the unusual heat, the strange behavior of animals, these were anomalies, easily dismissed, absorbed into the familiar rhythm of life. Even the faint acrid smell that now permeated the air, a hint of sulfur carried on the evening breeze, was likely attributed to distant industrial activity or natural phenomena, anything but the awakening of the very earth beneath their feet. As darkness deepened, the true scale of the unseen ascent would have become more pronounced, though still largely imperceptible to the human eye. Deep within the earth, magma, superheated and under immense pressure, was relentlessly pushing upwards, fracturing rock, creating new pathways, and building an unimaginable force. This was a process that had been ongoing for hours, perhaps even days, a slow, inexorable march towards eruption. The mountain, once a symbol of peace and prosperity, was now a ticking time bomb, its internal mechanisms churning with a silent, destructive energy. The initial phase of a Plinian eruption, such as the one that would soon engulf Pompeii, is often characterized by a column of ash and pumice rising miles into the atmosphere. This column, driven by the explosive release of pressure, would have begun its unseen ascent in the early hours of the evening, a dark, ominous plume against the fading twilight. For those few who might have been awake and looking towards the mountain, it might have appeared as a distant, unusually large cloud, perhaps mistaken for a severe thunderstorm brewing on the horizon. The sheer scale of the event, its initial height and velocity, would have defied immediate comprehension. As the column continued its rapid ascent, it would have begun to interact with the upper atmosphere, spreading outwards to form the characteristic pine tree shape that Pliny the Younger would later describe. This iconic shape, a dark, towering column crowned by a spreading cloud, would have been the first truly visible sign of the eruption for those in Pompeii and the surrounding areas. Yet even then, its true nature might have been misinterpreted. Perhaps a distant, unusually large thunderhead, or a strange atmospheric phenomenon. The sheer novelty and scale of it would have made immediate recognition difficult. As the night deepened, the base of the column, where the explosive forces were most intense, would have begun to glow with an eerie, incandescent light. This light, a reflection of the superheated gases and molten rock being ejected from the volcano, would have cast a terrifying, flickering pallor over the landscape. For those in Pompeii, this would have been a truly unsettling sight, a stark contrast to the familiar darkness of a moonless night. The light would have intensified as the eruption gained momentum, transforming the familiar silhouette of Vesuvius into a monstrous, fiery beacon of destruction. Simultaneously, the ground beneath Pompeii would have continued to tremble, the tremors growing in intensity and frequency. These were not the gentle, rolling quakes of earlier in the day, but sharp, violent jolts that would have rattled buildings, sent objects crashing to the floor, and instilled a growing sense of panic. The cumulative effect of these tremors, combined with the ominous visual spectacle unfolding on the mountain, would have begun to chip away at the city's remaining sense of normalcy. Sleep, for many, would have become impossible, replaced by a growing dread and a desperate search for answers. The unseen ascent of Vesuvius was a symphony of geological power, a prelude to the devastating overture that would soon engulf Pompeii. It was a process of immense scale and terrifying beauty, unfolding in the darkness, largely unobserved by the unsuspecting inhabitants below. The mountain, once a symbol of life and prosperity, was now revealing its true, destructive nature, its silent ascent a chilling harbinger of the chaos to come. The ash, which would soon fall like a suffocating blanket, was already being propelled miles into the sky, a silent, unseen menace gathering strength in the darkness. The night, which should have brought rest and peace, was instead ushering in an era of unimaginable terror, a testament to the raw, untamed power of nature. As the night deepened and the unseen ascent of Vesuvius continued, the ominous glow from the mountain would have intensified, painting the sky with a terrifying, unnatural light. For the inhabitants of Pompeii, the initial confusion and unease would have given way to a growing sense of dread, as the true nature of the unfolding catastrophe began to reveal itself. This was the moment of truth, when the silent threat transformed into a tangible, deadly reality. The rain of ash and pumice began, a relentless downpour that would slowly, inexorably, bury the city. Our narrative now shifts to the terrifying immediacy of the eruption's first phase, focusing on the impact of the falling debris and the desperate struggle for survival. The first particles to fall would have been fine ash, almost imperceptible at first, like a light dusting of snow. But quickly, this would have escalated into a steady shower of larger, coarser ash, mixed with small, lightweight pieces of pumice. Pumice, a porous volcanic rock, is formed when superheated, gas-rich lava is violently ejected from a volcano. As it cools rapidly in the air, the gases escape, leaving behind a frothy, lightweight material that can float on water. These pieces, though seemingly innocuous at first, would have begun to accumulate rapidly, blanketing everything in a thick, suffocating layer. The initial fall of ash and pumice would have plunged the city into an unnatural darkness, even in the middle of the day. The sun, if it had been daylight, would have been completely obscured, replaced by a terrifying ash-laden sky. For those caught outside, the experience would have been disorienting and terrifying. The air would have become thick with volcanic particles, making breathing difficult and causing eyes to sting and water. The fine ash would have coated everything, clinging to clothes, hair, and skin, transforming the vibrant colors of Pompeii into a monochromatic landscape of gray. As the pumice continued to fall, its weight would have become a significant threat. While individual pieces were light, their sheer volume would have rapidly accumulated on rooftops, balconies, and other elevated surfaces. The flat roofs of many Roman houses, designed to collect rainwater, would have been particularly vulnerable. The increasing weight would have strained timbers and cracked tiles, leading to the collapse of roofs and upper floors. This structural failure would have trapped many within their homes, or crushed those attempting to seek shelter indoors. The sounds of collapsing buildings, mingled with the relentless patter of falling debris, would have added to the cacophony of terror. Escape, for those who attempted it, would have been a desperate and perilous undertaking. The streets, once bustling with life, would have become treacherous, covered in a thick layer of ash and pumice that made walking difficult and slow. Visibility would have been severely limited, further compounding the challenge of navigation. Many would have attempted to flee towards the gates of the city, hoping to reach the relative safety of the open countryside. But the relentless fall of debris, combined with the growing panic and confusion, would have made organized evacuation almost impossible. For those who remained, whether by choice, inability to escape, or a desperate hope for the eruption to subside, the hours would have stretched into an agonizing eternity. They would have sought refuge in the strongest parts of their homes, huddling together, listening to the terrifying sounds of the world collapsing around them. The air, increasingly laden with ash, would have become toxic, making every breath a struggle. The lack of light, the suffocating dust, and the relentless noise would have created a sensory overload, pushing many to the brink of despair. This phase of the eruption, characterized by the heavy fall of ash and pumice, was a slow, agonizing death for many. It was not the instantaneous destruction of later pyroclastic flows, but a gradual suffocation, a relentless burial under tons of volcanic debris. The archaeological evidence from Pompeii vividly illustrates this reality. The casts of victims found in their final moments often huddled together, or attempting to shield themselves from the falling debris, bear silent witness to the terror and despair of those hours. Their postures, frozen in time, tell a story of a struggle against an overwhelming, unstoppable force. As the final, devastating pyroclastic flows swept over Pompeii, incinerating everything in their path, the city was not merely destroyed. It was transformed. The vibrant life that had pulsed through its streets, the laughter, the conversations, the mundane routines, all were abruptly silenced, entombed beneath layers of ash and pumice. Yet, in this very act of destruction, an extraordinary preservation occurred. Pompeii and its sister city Herculaneum became unique time capsules, offering an unparalleled glimpse into the daily lives of the Roman world. Our journey concludes with a reflection on what remains, not just in the archaeological sense, but in the enduring legacy of a city that, despite its tragic end, continues to speak volumes across the centuries. The immediate aftermath of the eruption would have been a landscape of utter desolation. A vast gray expanse of volcanic debris stretching as far as the eye could see, where once a thriving city stood. The once familiar landmarks, the forum, the temples, the houses, were now buried, their forms softened and obscured by the suffocating blanket of ash. For centuries, Pompeii lay forgotten, a ghost city beneath the earth, its existence a mere whisper in historical texts. It was not until the 18th century that systematic excavations began, slowly, painstakingly, bringing the lost city back to light. The discovery of Pompeii was a revelation, offering a window into a world that had previously only been imagined through fragmented texts and grand monuments. Unlike other Roman sites, which had been plundered for their materials or continuously inhabited and rebuilt, Pompeii offered a snapshot of everyday life, frozen in time. The carbonized remains of wooden furniture, the frescoes still vibrant on the walls, the graffiti scrawled on public buildings, all provided an intimate, visceral connection to the people who lived there. It was as if the city had simply paused, waiting for someone to peel back the layers of ash and witness its final moments. Perhaps the most poignant and powerful remains are the plaster casts of the victims. As the ash solidified around the bodies of those who perished, it created voids. In the 19th century, archaeologists developed a technique to pour plaster into these voids, creating incredibly detailed casts of individuals in their final moments. These are not mere skeletons. They are hauntingly lifelike representations of human beings, captured in their postures of despair, fear, or even quiet resignation. A mother shielding her child, a dog curled in a final sleep, a man covering his face. These casts are a direct, emotional link to the human tragedy, reminding us that behind every artifact and every ruined building, there were real lives, real stories. Beyond the physical remains, Pompeii's legacy lies in the invaluable insights it provides into Roman society. We learn about their architecture, their engineering, their art, and their daily routines. We see their social structures, their religious beliefs, their economic activities, and even their sense of humor etched into the walls of their homes and public spaces. The city's preservation has allowed historians and archaeologists to reconstruct a remarkably complete picture of Roman life, from the grand villas of the wealthy to the humble dwellings of the working class, from the bustling marketplaces to the quiet domestic spaces. Pompeii also serves as a powerful reminder of the destructive power of nature and the fragility of human existence. It stands as a testament to the fact that even the most advanced civilizations are ultimately at the mercy of geological forces. Yet, paradoxically, it also highlights the resilience of the human spirit, the enduring desire to rebuild, to remember, and to learn from the past. The city's rediscovery sparked a renewed interest in classical antiquity, influencing art, literature, and architecture for centuries to come. Our journey through the final hours of Pompeii has been an attempt to bridge the gap between the past and the present, to breathe life into the silent stones and the haunting casts. It is a story that encourages us to reflect on the preciousness of ordinary moments, on the beauty of the mundane, and on the universal human experience of life and death. Pompeii, in its tragic end, offers us a profound lesson that even in the face of unimaginable catastrophe, the echoes of human life, in all its complexity and beauty, can endure. What remains is not just a city, but a powerful narrative, a silent testament to the lives that were lived, and a timeless reminder of our shared humanity.